So, hello everyone, welcome to Level Up IAS, and we are bringing you a new series. If you are interested in political science and international relations, if you are appearing in the upcoming examination in 2024, or maybe even after that, and you are in the starting phase of your preparation, you might be confused for a lot of things: how to start your preparation, where to start, what topics to begin with. You might have heard about some of the topics, you might have seen that, okay, if you are studying political science and international relations, you might have to learn about something like a concept of power, a concept of justice, a concept of rights, authority. And the problem is that writing, preparing with the perspective of UPSC comes very later on. But you need to have some very basic ideas about what these concepts are even from to begin with. Okay, so this is going to be a series, and we are going to come with a lot of videos in line with this one only, where we are going to discuss about the theoretical concepts in the most easiest way so that it will make sense to you. Okay, this will be very simple: political science and international relations, PSIR concept. That will be the name of the series. You can Google it up, you can check out the YouTube channel of Level Up IAS, and we'll be adding up more and more videos in this line only. Okay, that's the whole plan. Now let's see what we're going to discuss today. As you must be aware by looking at my background, that we are going to discuss about justice today. Okay, now when one talks about justice, it's a very basic fundamental concept. Okay, it comes from the very basic word just, being just. That's where justice comes from. Even if you don't jump into what is the concept of the meaning of justice in modern 21st century society, what justice meant in the colonial world, what justice meant in the medieval times or the European medieval times, and then the word justice meant in the medieval times in Indian sense, and all those things are there. But at least one can say that justice starts with being just. Now, when we are working our way up the ladder for the civil service examination, it is also needed, we are needed to be aware of what are the different parameters of this very concept we have to study, as in what Government of India and the syllabus defined by CSE, for civil service examination, has told us that justice might entail these things. So I'll tell you that. And also we have to understand what are the different kind of questions which have been asked in the examination, and a basic understanding of that is also necessary. So here is basically, it's written that when we are going to read about justice, what all different concepts we have to study about. Okay, now for example, just give me a sec. Yeah, so right from starting off, the very basic dimension of justice. So we also need to understand about the different theories, and we have to understand from the very basic, as in the Greek time, when the whole concept of justice was first evolved as far as our understanding goes in the modern time. So Aristotle's three type of justice: analysis and criticism of Rawls' theories, relevance of Rawls' ideas in Indian context, Rawls and his theories of justice, okay, and procedural and substantive justice. All these things are it. Now this might be too much for you if you are watching and coming to a class on justice for the very first time. Okay, I totally understand that, and I sympathize with you if you are looking at it for the very first time. But then you also need to understand this is all what different parameters about justice you have to learn for your preparation of civil service examination. Nothing more, nothing less. This is all what is required. Now, as you can see, again and again a word has been used here, and that is Rawls. Whether we are going to analyze and criticize Rawls' various theories, we are going to look into Rawls' ideas in the Indian context, and then it's saying that Rawls and his theories of justice, the very basic idea. That seems like Rawls must be some important person, and he is an important person, pretty important person. Now, to give you a perspective how important he is, let me just show you this thing. Now, Over here is basically listed all the 16 questions on the very topic or related to the topic of justice, which have been asked in since 1994. So if you frankly, if you go outside and start searching what are the different questions which have been asked related to justice by civil service in the civil service examination by UPSC, this is the 16 all odd questions you will find, including the very last one, that is Rawls' idea of liberal self is too individualistic. Explain in this context the communitarian criticism of Rawls' theory of justice. And this question was asked in 2023 only. अभी ठीक है इस last week में. So up to that much we need to understand. Okay, that seems like that there is some concept of communitarianism and they have done some kind of criticism of Rawls' theory of justice. Okay, Rawls का आइडिया पसंद नहीं आया होगा इन लोगों को, शायद कुछ प्रॉब्लम होगी, बात करते हैं आज इन पे भी. ठीक है. So in total 16 question of justice, when I actually counted, and you can actually count on your own also, you will find that 12 different questions are just somehow related directly to Rawls. Believe me, I'm telling you, on all 16 questions I can mention somewhere Rawls. When you'll actually be practicing with us in Clark Foundation batches and all that, you will find that one can use actually the concepts of Rawls in all the 16 questions. But वो बात की बात है. For now, you just need to understand that where one has to begin. And over there also, the direct implication or direct question is something 75%. 12 out of 16 questions are directly from the various ideas propounded by Rawls and then the subsequent criticism which was done by later on people. So that thing has been assured that seems like in the concept of justice itself, Rawls is a very important person. So let's do this very basic exercise that I'll give you some basic idea about the what is justice in a generic sense, and then we'll directly jump into understanding who is Rawls and why exactly we have to give so much importance to him, or why the world has given so much importance to him in the last 50 years, and what is actually changing right now that we are reading more and more about criticism of the Rawlsian ideas. ठीक है, कुछ तो ऐसा हुआ होगा कि last 50 years में people have started reading a lot more about Rawls, and then something must also have happened that people have started criticizing Rawls. Okay, this is a cyclic concept, people. Whenever you are reading political science, always understand every new concept, every new idea goes through this very cycle. It get evolves, it get appreciated. Later on, people says that this is the very solution of everything in your life. But then people also realize after few years कि नहीं, it doesn't seems like it is able to or it's capable of resolving all our issues, all our problems. So it deserves to be criticized, and then starts the phase of criticism. And then staff develops a better version of that concept, something like a iPhone 15, 16, 17 wali series. So a neo version or a post version of that concept evolves, or फिर उसका criticism. So this cycles goes on for every concept, every theory, all the scholars and everywhere. You have to keep that much in mind first of all, and we are going to discuss about Rawls thereafter. Fine, chaliye. So while talking about Rawls, we'll also need to go through these very concepts. So इस पे आते हैं, we'll discuss about this. But before that, we just need to go through some very basic concepts. That is, if someone asks you, what is justice to you? Okay, is justice all about being just only? Okay, is justice all about being just? Huh? or justice is about impartiality, or justice is about equity. Okay, these concepts seems like impartiality, or equity. If suppose we are explaining the concept of justice, okay, if we are explaining concept of justice in the society on a societal norms and a societal standard value, then what justice means? Justice is more about the role of government in the regulation of distribution, one can say. Ultimately, when a government, just think about this, when a government is called that it is the government is doing justice to the people in society, when almost everyone gets what they deserve. Now this is a very utopian idea, okay, eudaimonic idea, that one says that one gets what they deserve. That never happens in no society. Okay, it was not happening in the Soviet Union, and it was not happening in any other place anytime, no matter what they call themselves, socialist or communist. वो equal distribution of wealth और equal चीजें पूरी तरीके से कभी नहीं होती, लेकिन हम इस पे एक बेसिक आइडिया डेवलप कर लेते हैं, ठीक है. सो इट इज एक्चुअली जस्टिस which regulates not only how resources will be handled, but also how rights will be developed or will be given to people to be, so that they will be able to assert it subsequently. Even the opportunities in a state or in a society at large will also be dependent on justice. Okay, that one has to keep in mind. If you know that much, then let me tell you that Rawls called justice to be the first virtue. What is a virtue? Very basic definition, it's a behavior. Agar if I have to explain you the concept of virtue in the easiest possible way, when I can tell you what is a virtue. Virtue is a kind of behavior. Behavior practiced over a period of time becomes a virtue. Okay, so Rawls called justice to be first virtue. Don't worry, you don't have to write or anything. Okay, whatever I am telling you is basically you will have in the form of handouts below this video. So there will be a link, Google Drive link most probably. You can go there and you can take up the PDF file and you can read it. Okay, I'll show you a copy of that in a minute or two. So it's basically the first virtue as per Rawls. Now, why we are going to give importance to Rawls and what are the different topics we are going to discuss about Rawls is Rawls came up with this idea when he also got very much confused that what is justice? Okay, is justice only about giving equal rights to people? Is justice about equal distribution among people? But then equal distribution at all time is almost impossible. कभी नहीं होगा society में. Okay, then justice is about regulation. Then justice is also something which helps you to decide the legal framework of the society. So is there any way to decide in a sentence, in a word, that okay, the society is just, or ultimate objective of the society is to make a just society? That's something of Aristotelian or a Platonic idea. Okay, so over there we come up with a very simple concept which Rawls came up with, and that he called basically justice is about fairness. So what Rawls said? Rawls said that justice is nothing but fairness. Rawls wrote a very seminal text. Okay, in 1971 called as a theory of justice. Okay, it is called as a theory of justice. And in this, in 1971 he wrote, इसकी भी एक कहानी है, I'll tell you in a minute. In this text he went on to explain in detail what is justice, how it works, what should be the standard of justice in the 20th century. Okay, and over here only he came up with this idea that justice can be best explained in the form of fairness. Justice is fairness. What is justice? Justice is fairness. I'm kind of repeating it again and again just to make sure that you get the very idea. We'll make a criticism of this also. I'm not no one to tell you that you believe and have faith on this very idea. You can make your own idea of justice also, but first understand what happened. So let's begin from the very starting. And as I was telling you, don't have to make a copy or anything. This is the handout which you will be able to download. Okay, so you have a basic idea of justice. All the text of Rawls is also written here. Then subsequently, his concept of justice of fairness is also written in detail. So you don't really have to, and there are enough space also. So if you get it printed out and all, you can then work on it simultaneously. Fine. So ये सारी चीजें हैं. You don't have to make a note right now. Just listen to the video and focus on that. So one thing is clear, that justice is about fairness. Okay. Now, why Rawls gave this idea? Now focus on this, the year. This is 1971. Okay. What happened in 1971? Bangladesh liberation नहीं, वो एक subcontinent का issue था. We will be talking it more from the perspective of global order. So you must have heard about that the 1960s were actually a very tumultuous period in the global affairs. Whether it was the ongoing crisis of the Vietnam, which led to the conscription of United States of America and subsequent the whole anti-government protest in United States. Something on a similar line was happening in Europe, and not only because of Vietnam thing, but also because of the disenchantment which evolved in the new generation of the European people who were born after 1945. And why they were highly disenchanted? Now, I won't be using the concept of behavioralism and all, because it will just make the whole thing more tweakable. ज़्यादा difficult हो जाएगा. इसको normal language में समझिए. That post 1945, after the Second World War, the global order, the society at large discussed, and they decided that what we will do, we will follow the empirical methods, because empiricism helps you understand things in a very better way. Because you have digits, you have figures and facts, and therefore decision making is very straightforward. There is no shadow region. You have the binary options, yes or no, 0 or 1. So it sounded very great, and it started after 1945. But it was seen that in 1960s, mid of 1960s, it was almost clear that what was expected to be the outcome of empirical methodology for everything, for all the decision making things, was not happening. Okay, so one can say that empirical method, that is over dependence on the factual value alone, was not giving us the information or not giving us the outcome which we were expecting for our society at large. And therefore it was a high time when a lot of scholars started looking back towards normative approach. अब फिर थोड़ा सा difficult हो गया. Now what they were looking is towards norms, pre-decided norms, instead of what actually is in this world right now, factual values wise. They started focusing again on what ought to be, क्या होना चाहिए. And one among these scholars was John Rawls. So at that very time, late 1960s, the crisis started, and in 1971 he wrote the seminal text, The Theory of Justice, in which he didn't talk about some specific mathematical equation, or didn't talk about a particular way or means ki you will do this and the society will become just. He came up with a very abstract notion of what is justice. Justice is fairness. Now, different society, different communities will have different sense of fairness. Won't it be? Yes, they have. And therefore, accordingly, we can change the standards of being just also. So that was very helpful. But he also came up with some basic thing. Always understand that in the initial period in 1971, when he wrote the theory of justice, he was very adamant on a monolithic idea of justice. And this monolithic idea of justice was oriented towards the Western world, as in the European and the Western European world and the American society. He himself was American. So on that front, that you should keep in mind. Fine. Now, when people started asking him that how you will decide or how you will make the society to be just, then he came up with these concepts of original position and veil of ignorance. Okay. Now, what is this? So, he said that one of the major problem while making a decision is everyone is a stakeholder. Why you are making a decision and why the society is calling you biased? Because no matter what decision you take, you are also a stakeholder. Even if nothing else, you will be blamed for taking that decision, and you want the decision to be correct. That itself makes you a stakeholder. In the least of the least cases also, if you are taking a decision, you know your name has now been connected to the decision. So you want that decision to be correct. You are still not in a position to say, okay, fine, let it be, whatever will happen. No, you are not neutral. You are still emphasizing on one outcome. Fine. So Rawls said that if there is a methodology through which one can be put outside this whole process, and from there one can make decision without knowing or without expecting the outcome in their favor, and this can only happen if one is unknown about what is good and bad for themselves. And therefore Rawls called for a situation, or basically it's a imaginary situation, where one is in the bliss of ignorance. Okay, one is in a state of ignorance, and or as specifically word he called as wheel of ignorance or veil of ignorance. एक पर्दा पड़ा हुआ है आपके आगे जिसके कारण आप ignorance के state में हैं, and therefore you don't know what is good and bad for you, what will benefit you, what you will reap you some profit, and what will create losses for you. And under those circumstances, if you take a decision, you will be able to take correct decision. Fine. Let me tell you, when you will see your PDF file which I have sent you, over there is this map. Okay, in this you will see that the whole concept of Rawls' idea, conscious intelligent state before our birth. So Rawls actually in his text gave this example of a fetus, and he has stated that before being born, the fetus doesn't have any clue that whether he is going to be born in Helsinki or Hisar. Okay, the fetus doesn't have any idea that whether he is going to be born in a family with a per capita with a GDP per capita of some $60,000 or 6,000 rupees. Okay, and under these conditions, if one considers that fetus has an intelligent state, that is he or she is that fetus is capable, and from he or she bhi kya karna, that fetus doesn't have a gender orientation now. So under those circumstances, if the fetus is intelligent enough to make decisions for the society at large, that fetus will make a proper decision, and that is considered the veil of ignorance, the state of veil of ignorance. Fine. So all this is written also in your handout, you don't have to worry. Okay, while I'm explaining the original position, it's a hypothetical thought experiment in Rawls' theory of justice, where people imagine themselves in a pre-social, pre-political state without knowing their social position, status, or natural talents. The original position is a way of evaluating what principle of justice would be agreed upon by rational self-interest individuals. Fine. We'll also come to these scholars who have either supported or criticized the idea, but in a minute. You first of all need to understand the very basic concepts only. Fine. Sure. So you got the original position and the benefit of veil of ignorance, and you also understood the concept. These concepts themselves have been asked in examination as a 10-marker question, and it is expected of you to write almost 150 words just on concept of veil of ignorance or veil of ignorance or original position. That do happens. And in that you will write about this very concept in 75 to 80 words, and then you will write an basic introduction of Rawls and Rawls' contribution to the theory of justice in modern times, and subsequently you will conclude that in the recent time there have been instances where he is criticized also. Okay? So that is one thing. Now, if you see in your handout, these are some basic things which I have just told you. Fine, the very idea of fairness I have explained, so you can go through the handout in your free time. Now, what's written here? Scholars who reject the concept of original position. So there are scholars like Friedrich Hayek, the famous Austrian economist, and being a realist he very highly specifically stated that, look, these things about original position and all sounds great, but it's frankly impossible. Ye ho nahi sakta. And when this is impractical, why we are even discussing about it? Okay, so that's a very basic criticism of his. Now, people like Robert Nozick also criticized it. Now, Nozick criticizes it and appreciates it also. So first of all, needs to understand, Robert Nozick was actually a American economist. Up to a certain extent, you call him a philosopher also. Ab now keh sakte hain. Nozick was a libertarian. So he supports the very right of every individual to have the entitlement to make decision on their own. The government should not interfere beyond a certain point. Okay? So if someone is coming from that perspective, obviously he is also going to oppose it some reasons. For example, Nozick also criticizes original position. He argues that the original position is too idealistic and does not reflect the way that people actually make decision. But at the same time, Nozick also argues that Rawls' theory of justice is most influential and powerful contemporary theory, and that is something for which Nozick appreciates it. So it can happen a same scholar has highlighted the benefits, the pros and the cons of a theory, and Nozick can be quoted here. A scholar like Ronald Dawkins, who has extensively worked on the concept of rights, he has also started, and he is someone who appreciated Rawls, and he has said no, he has not criticized him or said कि ये तो utopian idea है, this is just eudaimonic idea, this cannot be applied and all. He has appreciated that at least what ought to be, क्या होना चाहिए, वो तो समझ में आ जाएगा. Using that original position concept, one will be able to decide what should happen ultimately in the best possible scenario. Whether the society at the end can achieve it or not is a different issue. Okay, but that ultimate position will be understood. So that is something for which Ronald Dawkins appreciates Rawls. Fine. So you kind of understood both sides of original position concept. Now next idea we have to understand about Rawls is Rawls' principle of social justice and the criticism of egalitarianism. Now, Rawls is someone who is, over here you will find a lot of similarity between the Gandhian idea and the Rawlsian idea. Even if you have not studied any of the political theory or concepts like that, you might have heard or you might have read a bit of NCERT books, or you have, even if you are preparing your civil service examination preparation, you must have gone through your NCERT books in their school time and all that. The very first page after the indexing and all that, it used to be a page on which Gandhiji's talisman was written. Not Gandhiji's talisman. Talisman nahi hota. Okay? It's Gandhi's or Gandhiji's talisman. Now what is this? Was Gandhiji's talisman was? Gandhiji says that whenever you are in a difficult situation, when you find it difficult to make a final decision about anything, what you do? You think about that person who from the bottommost strata of the society, the person in the most poorest of the poor condition you have ever seen, and you then think that your action, how it is going to affect that person. If it's going to benefit that person, great, you do it. If it's not going to benefit that student or that person, or is going to create difficulty for that person, stop it, don't do it. Simple as that. Okay, so there is a societal outlook, but ultimately he want to Antoday, support and help those who are at the bottommost strata of the society. That's the Gandhian notion. Roles also coming from something very simple idea when it comes to social justice. Rawls says that look, there has to be a standard. He has two basic ideas on this, and he says there has to be a basic threshold in the society. So there are bare minimum requirements of everyone which has to be fulfilled, and that can only be done by distributive justice, which is hands of the government or the state, I should say. But beyond that, even if difference has to be maintained, and there will be some difference no matter what you do, if there is complete equality, then also society will reach to a stage of stagnation. Okay? So he says that if ever there has to be a difference, the difference has to be in favor of those who are at the bottommost strata. So that is something you again have to keep in mind. Let me just show you. What I just explained is chalo. This is the veil of ignorance. So Rawls here, first he criticizes the concept of utilitarianism, and then he went on to argue that the very idea. Okay, so here is the concept I was telling you. The principle of equal basic liberties, that is, there has to be a bare minimum threshold. Now it makes a lot of sense. Understand that how government of India or any other welfare state government in the modern times work. Government of India also do these things, that we cannot provide equal opportunities, and thus in the sense equal facilities to everyone, but a bare minimum thing we can. So we cannot provide universal basic income of some kind, or some very high hefty pricing cannot be taken care by the government for the people at large, but Food Security Act can be given. So basic minimum, bare minimum, so that people will be able to get meal 2 times a day, that can be taken care. So that's where written principle of a basic equal basic liberties. Rawls believe that in just society, everyone should have the same basic rights and opportunities. This means that everyone should have equal access to things like education, healthcare, basic freedom like speech and religion. So Rawls is not only focusing on the material goods, but also about how the equality in the society has to be maintained. Now these things are there in our constitution also. I'm also trying to collaborate, because later on I have to tell you that how Rawlsian idea are visible very much directly in the Indian constitution and Indian society, the way we live right now. At the same time, Rawls also talk about that fair equality of opportunity and difference principle. That means even if difference has to be maintained, even if there is a situation where some differences has to be maintained, it has to be maintained in such a manner that people who are at the bottommost strata should be benefited first. And you can actually see the reservation policy in India can be explained in this manner. Any and almost all kind of affirmative action which government takes can be explained in this manner. It means some inequality in wealth and income is acceptable as long as it benefits the people who are at least well off in the society. So here it's written for you, you can read later on also. In Indian case, the government reserves seats in education institution, okay, and that can be explained in this manner, okay, too. Now, Rawls says one more thing, that Rawls critiques utilitarianism. Now, for those who don't understand about the utilitarianism, let me just tell you again the very basic idea. of it start with utility. It starts with utility. What? Utility. Whether one thing has a utility or not. And that's where the whole thing starts. Okay. Someone like a Jeremy Bentham, who initially came, the English philosopher, who initially came up with the idea of utilitarianism, took a very empirical approach, pragmatic approach, and he directly said that it has to be maintained or has to be checked in the terms of pleasure and pain. And he even went to the such an extent, extreme extent, that he said all the pleasures will be of there is no difference in the quality of pleasure and pain, and the only difference is in the quantity of pleasure and pain. That means you getting failed in examination and your you having a fight at your family, or your partner leaving you, that will also have the same kind of effect. You failing an examination and having a fight at home, that's a totally different thing. Different, both are negative points, but both are pain points, but both will have different kind of feelings. But Bentham doesn't accept it. Fine. There have been later on scholars, someone like J.S. Mill, who has said that no, not only that pleasure and pain, quantity has to be checked, but quality has also to be checked. Means different kind of pain, different kind of pleasures will have different type of reaction. That's a very basic raw definition which you need to understand before you jump into Rawlsian observation. Now Rawls says that in a society, if one says that anything and everything has to be done for the greatest good of greatest number of people. Okay, that's the utilitarianism basic idea which Bentham propounded based on pleasure and pain. That if 100 people will be benefited by doing something wrong to one person, that wrong to one person should be done. That can be the easiest way of explaining the greatest good for greatest number of people. But Rawls will say that no, this is wrong. There has to be some demarcation, and the society at large should not go below that. Here only you will see he critiqued the utilitarianism for justifying sacrificing the goal of some individual for the happiness of the majority. And because of this protectionism which Rawls provide to the minority through his criticism of utilitarianism, we keep Rawls on a liberal side. This is the major reason why we keep Rawls on the liberal side of the spectrum in whole idea of political science. He gave the very idea of Immanuel Kant that can be used to maintain these things, and he said Kant's moral idea of freedom and equality for every human being. Every person should be treated as an end in it themselves and not means for someone else's end. Fine. Every person should be an end on their own and should not be used as a means otherwise. So this is also a very basic idea. Now, if you are conceptually, if you understand this much, now we can directly jump into Rawls' observations or its impacts of Rawlsian idea in Indian scenario, Indian context. Okay. In the examination, once a question was also asked about comparison between the Rawlsian idea and the Ambedkar's idea. Okay, so always understand that Ambedkar's idea is more on the substantive justice side, whereas many a time Rawlsian idea also gets into the procedural justice. Okay, and always also understand that where Rawls came up with his theory initially in 1971, and then in 1993 he further updated his theory. Okay, and in 1971 when he was talking mostly about the monolithic structure of justice as fairness, by 1993 he accepted that look, there are enough society, there are enough cities, communities, places where various kind of people, various communities come and amalgamate into one, come and live together, and therefore there is a huge level of overlapping which take place. So if Rawls says, if a concept called as public reason is maintained then people will talk among themselves, people will discuss things, and issues will be resolved. And then in this society where deliberation will take place, okay, very many communities can live together with somewhat different set of belief sets, okay, and it won't be required that all the time everyone will have the same monolithic sense of justice which he initially propounded for the whole world order. Fine. So that also you need to understand. This is a text which he wrote in, I think so, 1993, called as Political Liberalism, where he talked about this. Now, relevance of roles in Indian context, as I told you, the post-colonial scholar, someone like Partha Chatterjee, have criticized roles. Even Satish Sabharwal, who is a sociologist, he has also criticized roles. And Partha Chatterjee, a post-colonial scholar, he has criticized roles for the very thing that he is too much focused on the Western European model, Western European idea only, and not focusing much on the other way of life. So that is something you have to keep in mind. Achha. So Ambedkar's contribution I have told you in a minute, so you can go through it. Here you can see Satish Sabharwal, Upendra Bakshi. Told you Satish Sabharwal is a sociologist. Now this is also a very important thing when we are discussing these topics. It is important that I will tell you that who these scholars are. It makes it easier for you to remember their name if I tell you in a quantifiable manner what their main work is, in which field they work in. It is easy to remember that way. Okay. So Satish Sabharwal, Upendra Bakshi have argued that Rawls' theory of justice has significant relevance in Indian context, but they have also provided highlights of criticism, that there are instances where Rawls' Indian idea is too much procedural. Okay, Upendra Bakshi is a famous constitutionalist. Okay, you might have even, I think so, there are enough articles of Upendra Bakshi in Indian Express every now and then, so you can go through them. As I told you, Partha Chatterjee is a post-colonial scholar. Dipesh Chakrabarty is also a post-colonial scholar, but a historian. So you will see that Dipesh Chakrabarty will specifically focus on the application of the Rawlsian notion on the sense of or idea or historical phase of Indian nationalism. So that is actually, when you will be writing the exam in paper 1 section B, it will be more useful and you can use it over there. Fine. So that idea is also written here, so you can go through it. Now after this, one more idea is important, and that is limitation of Rawls' theory. And this is very, very important. Let me just go through it. Yeah, it's here. Fine. Now you'll be reading it in your handouts also, that Rawls came up with his theory in 1971. Within 2 years, by 1973, the famous scholar Brian Berry, he came up with his text in which he criticized he wrote liberal theory of justice, a liberal theory of justice, in which he criticized Rawls for doing what? Saying that the rationality of individuals as argued by Rawls in the original position is actually doubtful. You cannot really expect human beings to always, under any circumstances, being rational. Sounds cynical, but that's how we have seen the world has worked. Brian Berry has further argued that it is difficult to define the latest, basically the original position. Okay, so advantage section of the society, least advantage section of the society, वो भी कैसे बताएंगे? Because if we are going to accept the difference principle, we have to say that, okay, X community or people in Y situation are the least advantages in the society. But we know it's all subjective beyond a point. Okay, you can go into empiricism and all, but after a point it's all subjective only. So Brian Berry has highlighted that also, and for that thing he has criticized Rawls, that under these circumstances his difference principle is not implementable on the society. Subsequently, we have seen that Rawls has been criticized, someone by scholar like Michael Sandel. If you want to, there are Michael Sandel's video on ethics. He has taken this big auditorium full of student classrooms in Harvard University on ethics and its topics, almost like 8 to 10 years back, and it's all available on YouTube, and you can go and check them out. Those videos are pretty good. So Rawls' liberal egalitarian concept of justice, and that has been criticized by Michael Sandel. In 1982, Michael Sandel called Rawlsian idea to be too individualistic. And now Michael, always understand, Michael Sandel, Michael Walzer, okay, and Charles Taylor. These are the three important communitarian scholars who will keep on criticizing Rawls for over deterministically focusing on individual in the society. Okay, these people always say that, look, at the end of the day, an individual's construct is based on the society and community one is living in, and therefore focusing too much on individual can create difficulties. And this, in this line only, Michael Sandel says that Rawls individual as disembodied who is not a part of the society. What he says, that, just give me a moment. Where is the thing? Yeah, fine. So he says that in the society it's not always possible that an individual's opinion should only be accepted. Community also plays a vital role. Now, similar criticism or criticism of atomistic conception of individual. Again, Charles Taylor also criticizes Rawls for being too atomistic. Now, atomistic is a word which has been evolved to focus on singularity, okay, on individualistic idea. And he again has criticized Rawls. Further, he argues individual choices have a social context. As I told you, an individual is a construct of the society in which they are born and brought up. Okay, and all your decisions are impacted by the way in the society which you are living. Fine. For example, it will never happen that you were living in, suppose, New Delhi, maybe Punjabi Bagh in New Delhi, and all of a sudden you decided on the very first day कि I'll become an angel investor. No, you will say कि I'll go and I'll have a paneer achari momos. That what will happen. Okay? So just keep in mind that the society you live in, okay, nothing against the Punjabi Bagh people, I'm just making an example, that the place where you are living, the society where you are born and brought up, plays a very vital and important role in your decision making also. Okay, your upbringing plays a very vital role, and that is what is highlighted here by Charles Taylor. Okay, now Michael Walzer in his book Spheres of Justice in 1983 has argued we cannot distribute goods to men and women. This is happening again and again. Until we understand what good means, what role they play in the society. So the subjectivity of good itself has been questioned by Michael Walzer. That can be highlighted. Subsequently, the Marxist scholars also criticize him. Okay, libertarian scholar like Robert Nozick have extensively criticized him because he says that Rawls has given too much power in hands of the state, while Rawls says that state can take care of distributive justice, and it's state's responsibility to make the division, make the difference, and take the final call that who is at the bottommost strata of the society, and differences should be made, and so that that person or that community of the society should be benefited. Who is state to take such a call? And when state takes such a call, it takes upon the rights of the individuals. An individual on their own had the entitlement to take the decision, which is taken away from them by Rawls' theory. That's Nozick's main opposition. Okay, Nozick himself is a libertarian scholar. Beyond that, Rawls' veil of ignorance we have discussed already. Ronald Dawkins' concept we have done. Rawls have also been criticized by feminist scholars many a time. Okay, family who have said that Rawls have not given importance even to the family as a construct. Why only individual? Sometime most, at least not the whole community. Then family should have been given much more importance. Okay, as the identity, as the unit form. Again, there are global issues also, because Rawls then wrote later on in 1999 a book of Law of the People, And in 1999, this book, he basically tried to expand and extrapolate his observation of justice as fairness into the international platform. And based on this only, then he went on to argue about the global human rights. Okay, there has to be some bifurcation. Then he also went on to say that under no situation countries or nation states should be given right to intervene in other countries' personal or internal affairs, and those kind of ideas are there. You need to understand that Rawls is being criticized for that also on the international platform, that it is almost impossible to do such a thing. And the whole idea of global standardized human right has been criticized by the Eastern world again and again. Whether it was Singapore's president, from prime minister, initial leader, or the Chinese scholars or Chinese leadership. Okay, so all of them have criticized Rawlsian idea, okay, of human rights. You must have been aware of the concept of, you have heard about Asian human rights. Okay, 𝐂𝐿e 𝐿 actually came up, or have again and again discussed about that a lot, and then 𝐂𝐤𝐳𝐵, and subsequently up to Chinese scholars or Chinese government भी Asian human rights का concept कहती है. And in the Asian human rights concept, they give much more importance to the community than to the individual. So that whole concept itself is a criticism of the Rawlsian supremacy of the individualism. Now, that's something you should know. Now, again, here also subsequently, communitarian critique of Rawls has been given here subsequently, which we have just discussed few minutes back. Now, why it is written like this? Because I and all other people already know this thing, and that's why we teach this thing. And as we have discussed, this is basically the notes which I've given you here in the class is basically part of a foundation course handouts. Okay, when we are teaching, when we are discussing about class on justice, these are the topics we are discussing on, and these are handouts from there only. And over there you will see that in 2023 only, yeah, the question which came in 2023 was, Rawls' idea of liberal self is too individualistic. Again, we were just talking about Rawls' idea of individual, and how Rawls' individual has been discussed and criticized extensively by communitarian scholars. Explain in this context the communitarian critique of Rawls' theory of justice. So exactly what was written in the handout, what we are discussing about, whether the point of Charles Taylor or Michael Walzer or Michael Sandel or Robert Nozick, all those points right from the top to the last have to be mentioned in this answer, and you could have got almost 80% of the marks. Okay, so this is, and as you can see, I was telling you about how 10-marker question involve about the original question, original position and all. So you can focus on the question number 5, and we can see the original position was asked in 2013 as a 10-mark question, and 2010 the veil of ignorance was asked as a 10-mark question. Okay, the difference principle in Rawls itself has been asked for 15 mark in 2010. So basically almost most of the topic in a fast go manner we have discussed here itself. Okay, there are few more concepts of justice. Always remember, justice is a very expansive topic. What I've discussed is just in a go through manner, but those handouts you please download and go through it, and it will be very helpful for you. Beyond that, as I was telling you, we will start justice not from the concept only of Aristotle, but even Plato's seminal text Republic was actually about justice. Okay, so justice starts from the ancient Greek times, and it's right now a particular perspective of justice is there, and it is still in the phase of evolution only, and it will keep on evolving. As long as human beings will live, we will have our different notion, different ideas, different perspective of justice, and we will be applying it again and again, and that's how we work. So make sure that please download the handouts, go through it. I hope the class was helpful for you to understand the concept of justice. Let's catch up in next session, and over there we'll come up with some more concepts, something like a power or legitimacy or authority or the relationship between them, or maybe some political theory concept, or we might discuss about behavioralism or post-structuralism or something like that. Okay, so but all these things will be covered in the series which we are starting. So make sure to keep a tab on the series and follow the channel. Thank you and have a nice day. That will be all.